There's no doubt that Stephen King is the undisputed legend of horror, and he's managed to create a whole new universe with his writings. From the Dark Tower series to It, King's extensive creativity has resulted in the creation of some of the most iconic horror universes that are home to some of the most terrorizing monsters of all time. From Pennywise and Kurt Barlow to the Boogeyman, these villains continue to haunt our scariest dreams even after they were first introduced. Today, we come to you with the top 10 most terrifying monsters in Stephen King's universe. So without further ado, let's jump right in. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Time to float.
Pennywise the Dancing Clown. It. To kick off this list, we have none other than Pennywise the Dancing Clown from It. While it had a reputation for luring children, Pennywise was a lot more complicated than what we saw on the surface. It was introduced as a supernatural alien creature that first landed on Earth in the 16th century and realized it had no natural food sources. Soon enough, it started preying on human children to satiate its hunger, and it was known for crawling out of hiding every 27 years. This dancing clown not only lured its victims through secretive means, but also fed on them in the most horrifying ways imaginable. It typically took the form of their worst fears in order to salt the meat, as the tension that it invoked in the children's bodies made them taste better. While we don't know its true form, it typically appeared in the form of a clown named Pennywise due to the general fear of clowns. In the film, Pennywise devoured Georgie Denborough after dragging him through a floodgate about 300 years after it first arrived on Earth. Over time, Georgie's brother Bill formed the Losers Club to track down his brother's murderer and even managed to scare Pennywise into hiding. However, the clown resurfaced after 27 years, only for the Losers Club to also make a comeback to destroy it once again. Randall Flag, the Dark Man, The Stand, Dark Tower, etc. Also known as Randall Flag, Walter Paddock appeared as the main antagonist in several Stephen King novels, including The Dark Tower, The Stand, and The Eyes of the Dragon. He remains to be the most recurring villain in the extended universe, and even King mentioned that he considers Flag to be the best villain he had ever created. He appears in numerous stories as a powerful and charismatic embodiment of evil and ultimately serves the Crimson King, who is notoriously known as the ultimate evil of the multiverse. Flag was also known as the Dark Man due to his involvement in sorcery and abilities such as necromancy, prophecy, and a supernatural influence over animals and humans. He was intent on destroying civilizations, stirring up conflicts, and thwarting protagonists from doing good in the world. In fact, he appeared as a demonic figure who wreaks havoc in the aftermath of a plague in his very first appearance, and he then proceeds to destroy the city of Delane in his following appearances. Later, he was intent on preventing Roland Deschain from reaching the Dark Tower, and he was typically spotted in cowboy boots, denim jeans, and a jacket. The Mist's eldritch creatures, the Mist. Described as an abnormally thick fog, the Mist was home to a bunch of otherworldly entities that hailed from an alternate realm. The Mist first manifested from across a lake after a striking thunderstorm and spread all across Maine before engulfing the entire planet. Soon enough, this mysterious fog started revealing horrors beyond the scope of humankind, as all sorts of monsters used this mist to shield themselves as they spread chaos and terror. In the movie, the mist was soon dissipated by the military, which also resulted in the disappearance of these eldritch creatures that resided in its thick layers. However, it was explored in greater detail in the television series, where this gray-blue mist had the ability to manifest physical anomalies that represented the most sinister, troubled parts of its victims' psyches. In this way, anyone trapped within the mist would find themselves face-to-face with their worst fears, typically in the form of eldritch entities that aligned with their darkest secrets and memories. While we don't know the origins of these entities, it was suggested that they originated in Shaymore after the Arrowhead Project ended up as a failure. In the aftermath of this, entities such as tentacles from Planet X, behemoths, arachni lobsters, gray widowers, and tarot buzzards, among others, inhabited the mist and ended up killing anyone who was unfortunate enough to be trapped within the fog. El Cuko, the Outsider. Also known as El Cuko, the Outsider was a titular antagonist of one of Stephen King's novels, which was later adapted into a television series. Some theories suggest that the Outsider originated from the same dimension as other Stephen King monsters, such as It and the Crimson King, especially since they all feed off their victims' fears. While we don't know much about him, El Cuko appears in the form of a paranormal shapeshifter who feeds on human suffering and claims many lives over the course of his story arc. In his initial appearances, El Cuko made his way to Dayton, Ohio, where he collected Heath Hodges' blood and used it to shapeshift into the man. Soon enough, he harassed and even murdered 2 young girls while assuming Heath's identity before repeating the process and stealing someone else's blood. He also had a habit of framing his past victims for his crimes, such as the time he left his victim's bloody underwear at Heath's house to frame him for his crimes. While Heath claims his own life after being accused of murder, El Cuko proceeds to transform into Terry Maitland to wreak more havoc, while Detective Ralph Anderson teams up with Holly Gibney to figure out a way to put an end to El Cuko's tyranny. The True Knot, Dr. Sleep. Appearing in Dr. Sleep, the True Knot was a team of quasi-immortal vampires who took sadistic pleasure in feeding on the life force of innocent children who were gifted with the Shining. Since they were hundreds of years old, they kept updating their names and details to fit in with the eras that they traveled through, and currently, the True Knot was led by Rose the Hat. Other team members included Crow Daddy, Token Charlie, Silent Sari, and Snakebite Andy, and they had spent years creating quite a legacy that included many businesses and campgrounds that served as secret hiding or meeting spots. One such spot was Bluebell Camp, situated on the outskirts of Colorado, where there were at least 200 quasi-vampires at one point. However, their numbers had dwindled down to just 14, and the True Knot spent most of their time detecting children with the Shining or psychic ability to look into the future and predict bad incidents. Their main objective was to feed on the steam, or the life force, of children with the Shine, but they also looked out for potential adults that could undergo the turning process and join their team. While they had been around for hundreds of years, they were not vaccinated or immune to human weaknesses, and they could potentially die if they were exposed to regular ailments. Kurt Barlow, Salem's Lot. Introduced as the main antagonist of Salem's Lot, Kurt Barlow was a Type 1 vampire who had unleashed terror upon the town of Jerusalem's Lot in Maine. He first arrived in this town after his assistant shipped him in a box and soon settled down in the abandoned Marston house. While he presented himself as an antique dealer, Kurt soon started kidnapping unsuspecting victims, such as young boys named Ralphie, Glick, and Danny. While he sacrificed Ralphie in an appeasement ritual, Danny was transformed into a vampire and then sent back home so that he could infect his mother as well. As the plot progressed, Kurt directed his attention towards a young telephone worker named Corey Bryant, and even hypnotized him before targeting other victims, such as Mark Patry and Father Donald Callahan. When the town eventually realized the danger they were facing, they teamed up to get rid of Barlow and kill him in the basement of Eva Miller's boarding house, even if it came at the cost of Callahan being forced to drink Barlow's blood. While this was the last of his appearances in the novel, Barlow played a strikingly different role in the 1979 miniseries, where he had powers such as telekinesis and the ability to enter people's houses without permission or even walk in the sunlight. He was typically portrayed as a tall, pale man with needle-like fangs and glowing red eyes, and he notably grew younger with each drop of blood he consumed. The Overlook Hotel, The Shining. The Shining remains one of Stephen King's most iconic works, and it popularized the secluded Overlook Hotel as a central antagonist. King's approach towards depicting an inanimate object as a source of evil won over the audience's hearts, and fans still maintain that the Overlook Hotel, or the Shining series at large, might be one of the scariest pieces of media out there. The origins of this hotel can be traced to its location in the Rocky Mountains, home to many infamous acts of suicide and crime. While most of its guests vacate the premises, the plot follows Jack Torrance as he checks in with his wife and son Danny. Even though the hotel's staff warns Jack about the unfortunate history of the place, Jack decides to stay back with his family when Danny starts seeing terrifying ghosts and visions. Soon enough, the kid enters room 217 and stumbles upon a corpse before seeing more terrorizing creatures all over the place, while Jack senses himself descending into insanity. As the hotel's evil begins to overpower their senses, Jack is convinced that he must kill his wife and son, only for the hotel to come to life and kill him before he could commit such a heinous act. While Jack's face is brutally chopped off with a rogue mallet, his wife and son manage to escape the place at the same time the boiler explodes and destroys the place once and for all. Of course, this was just the plot of the original novel, and many of these events were tweaked for the 1980 film. The Undead of Pet Cemetery, Church and Gage. Introduced as Ellie Creed's pet, Church, or Winston Churchill, was one of the two main antagonists of Stephen King's 1983 book Pet Sematary. While Church was introduced as a loving cat, it lost its life after a truck ran over it, and Ellie's father then buried it at the pet cemetery. As the plot progressed, Ellie lost her son, Gage Creed, in a similar truck accident and ended up burying him at the same pet cemetery as well. However, he was unaware of the fact that everything that was buried at the cemetery had a tendency to come back to life, and it was not long before Church and Gage both made a comeback. While Church used to be a loving cat, it had turned into a violent creature who killed birds and mice and left their bodies lying around the house, while Gage had also transformed into a zombified child with powers such as superhuman strength, shape-shifting, and intuition. In fact, Gage had turned into an emotionless homicidal maniac who is determined to kill just about anyone in his path, and the rest of the plot revolves around the family's efforts to send these undead beings back to their resting place.
Come on!
Christine from Christine. Serving as the titular antagonist of King's novel Christine, this character was far more unusual than most monsters on the list. For starters, Christine was not a human or alien, but rather it was a female car with an evil spirit. Designed as a 1958 Plymouth Fury, Christine was assembled at one of Chrysler's plants in Detroit, Michigan, where Roland D. LeBay customized this car and even used it for about 21 years. Over the course of time, Christine started decaying and was barely even operational when Arnie Cunningham stumbled upon her and fell in love with the design. While Arnie bought the car, he didn't realize that Christine almost acted like a mean-spirited girlfriend and that both Roland's wife and daughter had died as a result of the car. Soon enough, Arnie asks a young girl named Lee Cabot on a date, and they drive around in the car when Lee almost chokes on a burger and dies. At this point, Lee tries to convince Arnie that Christine is out to murder her, but the young man refuses to listen to her. Of course, this does not result in a pleasant ending for anyone involved, as Christine kills off George LeBay, and every single member of a local bully's gang who had tried to vandalize the car before finally coming after Arnie's best friend. While we don't know how Christine gained sentience or even turned into an evil monster, it suggested that she might be possessed by the ghosts of every single victim that had died in the car. Some theories also suggest that Roland LeBay possessed the car, especially since he had gone to great lengths to customize it right from the beginning. This car also had some unique abilities, such as regeneration, fire improvement, as well as the power to teleport from one place to another. The Boogeyman, Night Shift. The Boogeyman was the titular antagonist of one of King's short stories from his 1978 collection, Night Shift, which was set in a psychiatrist's office. In this story, the protagonist is depicted as a paranoid and somewhat insane individual who claims that his children died under mysterious circumstances and even blames their deaths on a crack in the closet door. While this might come across as eerie or even unusual, we soon realize that he might be onto something, as the Boogeyman lurks in his home and targets any and every child that ever steps foot into the house. While the protagonist decides to shake off his fears and move to a new house, his pregnant wife soon gives birth to their third child after losing 2 kids in the past. Even though they seemed to have turned over a new leaf, the Boogeyman does not get off their backs and follows them to their new house, where he soon finds a way to kill the third child as well. Of course, this creature's actions do not come to light throughout the story until the psychiatrist takes off his mask at the end to reveal that he was the Boogeyman in a chilling finale. Marvelous videos. I think you mean marvelous verdict. Marvelous verdict. And with that, we've explored some of the most terrifying creatures in Stephen King's different universes, ranging from the popular Pennywise to other entities such as El Cuko and Christine. We hope you enjoyed exploring them with us, and do share your favorite picks in the comments below. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.